when I'm asked, what is really the one key characteristic that is essential for building wealth, and it really is frugality. This idea of the big hat, no cattle. What we have found in survey after survey is that for every affluent person who could actually afford a top line car or a top line wristwatch or anything that's luxury, every one who can actually afford it, there are 4 to 5 other people who buy the same item because they want to look wealthy. and it's a conundrum. You can either be wealthy or you can look wealthy.
My money.
Money.
I get money from you.
Money in the bank.
Young money.
Money, 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 money. It's a rich man's world.
It goes back to even when I was 5 years old, if you want to go back that far. That's when my father died.
Oh.
And my point is, yeah, he was 38. I was 5. First funeral I ever went to. But then I really understood or got to understand the idea of mortality. With that said, my mother was she was a high school graduate. She didn't, she was a housewife, and she raised the kids, and I was the youngest of them. And, I didn't know that kids took vacations until I was 10 years old. I just didn't realize that. But anyway, I grew up in a very modest background. And consequently, I decided to go to a state school because that's what I could afford. And it just so happened to be the State University of New York at Albany. So that got me there because of lack of funds, choosing a state school. In my junior year, I met Professor Stanley in a marketing course called Consumer Behavior. And I was a pretty good student, a very good student, in fact. I graduated cum laude. And he invited me to take part in his very first study of the affluent market back in 1973. So
way back when then. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the very first study. And then he encouraged me to get my MBA under his direction so we could do some more research together. And then after my MBA in 1976, he decided to go to work at another school. And I then went to RPI to get my PhD and returned to the faculty at the State University. And I was there for 31 years. So I never really left school. And maybe I also have to thank my mother for this, because one of the things she always told me was, Bill, stay in school.
You did.
And I did. I took it really literally. Okay. So in 1973, when we started the research, and then over the next 20 years, we did a number of consulting studies and academic papers together. And it was in 1993 when Tom called me up and said, Bill, do you still have the old data sets, from the consulting and other projects we did? And I did. He says, well, let's look at them again and create another overall questionnaire for this project he described as Big Hat, No Cattle. Okay? That was the running title of the research. It was about who has the money and who has the illusion of money. And so in 1993, we got a contract to write the book, which turned out to be The Millionaire Nextdoor, and we're off to the races. It has sold 4 million copies in all versions to date.
Yeah, 4 million copies. That's awesome.
Electronic copies and foreign copies.
So you lost your dad at a young age. Okay, who was the biggest influence in your life then? Was it your mom, or was it your spirituality? What was your faith? What really made Bill go?
I don't know which one I'm gonna put first, but yeah, my mother, my mother's mother, my grandmother. That's the only grandparent I knew. My grandmother Veronica. She lived till 1980, and Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I tried to teach her English and she tried to teach me Lithuanian. And I don't think it worked very well in either case. And also, I might point out, in 1996, that was also a pivotal year in my life because my mother had a stroke. And all of a sudden, she could no longer be the primary caregiver to her quadriplegic son, my brother Tony. And so the book is out. I'm still at the university. I'm on doing speeches around the country. But I vowed to keep my brother out of a nursing home. And I was fortunate enough to, have enough money to buy him a house, keep him out of a nursing home. And I was his personal aide every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or almost every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for 20 years. Until he died a natural death in 2015.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Bill. That's when I heard about that. When you told me about that, and I don't know if you ever wrote about it, but that really you got me on that one. And your brother, he had MS, or multiple sclerosis, around age 23, if you will.
That's right. And my father died of multiple sclerosis as well in 1957. So, I mean, it can be quite insidious. There can be, all sorts of strains of the disease. But my brother had a chronic progressive case, and he was in a wheelchair by the time he was 25. And, in the last 10 years of his life, he couldn't even scratch his nose, So, I mean, you had to feed him, bathe him, dress him. You did what you had to do.
And how old was your mom when she had a stroke, by the way?
Let's see, 83. So she was pretty robust until then. Yeah.
When she was 83, huh?
Yeah.
When she was 83 years old? Yeah.
Yeah, she was 83 when she had the stroke, and then she died about a year and a half later from complications of the stroke.
So I had kind of a similar. My mother had a stroke actually in her 60s, believe it or not. But so I kind of get it. And so you wrote this book with Tom Stanley. By the way, I knew Tom Stanley before I knew you, because remember he wrote the book Marketing the Affluent, whatever.
Yep.
And I was always the type of guy who would call up if I read something interesting. I'd try to find the guy, and I think, and he was really good. And he taught at the University of Georgia or something.
Georgia State University.
Georgia State, okay. And I remember talking to him, and him and I talked back and forth. He was just a very, very nice guy. But then life is short and life is precious. Then what happened? Did he get into a car accident?
Yeah, in February 2015. He died in a car crash in Atlanta.
So but no, he was a great guy. I mean, like yourself, and so then you and Rich Van Ness wrote the Richer Than a Millionaire, and how's that going now?
Yeah, we're still out there plugging it along. We get institutional sales. That's really useful. When there are seminars, they'll buy in bulk, and that's certainly welcome. We have a Polish edition of it.
A Polish? Who sold the Kishka?
Yeah, that came out last year. Yeah, last year. I have it in my office here someplace. I could hold it up. But my wife and I went to Warsaw, Poland, where I could do a seminar, and stayed for a week and saw on my father's side, that's Polish. And I didn't speak Polish either. But everybody speaks English there. It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. Now, one of the things I'm trying to simplify this thing because I think everyone should get your books. 4 million copies now? 4 million copies of the Millionaire Nextdoor?
Yeah, if I could, can I do that?
Yeah, please do.
Can I do that?
You got it. Yeah, Richard, you got that.
All right. Got to be shameless in this business.
Yeah, you got it. Of course you got to do that. And then, what's the website, by the way?
richerthanamillionaire.com.
Okay.
All one word.
But, one of the things which this may sound corny, but you guys did all this research. Okay, I'm a facts guy. I'm a very doubting Thomas guy, Bill. I like things. I like facts. And I think facts are our friends. That's what I like about what you and Tom Stanley did, and then what you did with Rich Van Ness. But, and I don't want to be presumptuous, but what I kind of got out of all this stuff, between your work and Tom Stanley's work and the piece you just did with Rich Van Ness, a lot of it is just being kind of the old Yankee thrift, which I learned from my parents. My father was an old Scotsman, you know what I mean? And my mother was Irish, and they worked very, very hard. They're people of the Depression. That if you really kind of maintain kind of the old frugality, if you will, is one of the really big things. You don't spend more than what you have. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Am I correct? I mean, you did all the scientific research.
Yeah, and you know what? My parents grew up during the Depression. So my mother, when I asked her, what was it like living, through 1929 and, 1932? And she goes, we didn't know we were poor. We always had a cow and we always had chickens. We just worked and made it happen.
And this is, I would assume the figures are pretty constant, that you and Tom and with Rich discovered that roughly 70% of millionaires next door, the affluent people, most of them are self-made. Am I correct?
No, that is correct. And if you do an analysis of the Forbes 400 and you look at how many people inherited their money and how many earned it through enterprise, it's about the same ratio. It's just amazing. It's it's a little tedious going through all the bios, but it's a statistic that holds up. And and an important thing about this, you spoke of frugality. Those people who actually earn it, when we look at the spending patterns of those who earned versus those who inherited, guess who spends more? The inheritor. Easy come, easy go.
Yeah.
But those who actually earn it say, wait a minute, that's my money. I want to be a good steward of it. And that's really an important dimension of wealth building, being a good steward and, watching what you're spending it on. When I'm asked, what is really the one key characteristic that is essential for building wealth, and it really is frugality. This idea of the big hat, no cattle. What we have found in survey after survey is that for every affluent person who could actually afford a top-line car or a top-line wristwatch or anything that's luxury, everyone who can actually afford it, there are 4 to 5 other people who buy the same item because they want to look wealthy. and it's a conundrum. You can either be wealthy or you can look wealthy. And frugality is really the key element that creates the wealth. I mean, you have to have perseverance and a job and a cash flow and, money coming in that you can invest. But without frugality, you have a very difficult task.
What we see today, Bill, and you've been following this and we've discussed it over the years, is that I see today, and this is, I've been in financial services now for like 38 years. It's hard to believe, but it goes by so quick. But I see today, Bill, that people really want something for nothing. I mean, they want the latest stock, the hot stock, or ETFs. They all want, so essentially what you're talking about, frugality and prudence and all this thing, is kind of the exact same thing that the exact opposite what the media is saying. You buy this ETF, the stock, or the FANG stocks, or whatever, and you'll get wealthy. But it's not. It's like, would you agree that gambling is almost promoted nonstop in this economy today? I mean, what's your opinion?
Yeah, we have become a very materialistic society. You can still buy a good car, but why not a 2-year-old depreciated luxury car? Let somebody give you the gift of early depreciation, right? So, I mean, you don't have to be an ascetic monk. You can still live well, but just be a wise steward of your money, And also, when I talk to my friends in law enforcement, their number one piece of advice is to avoid mayhem, keep a low profile. So if somebody's wearing, all the accoutrement, the bangles, the gold, the flashy brand new car. Now, who's the criminal element going to go after? The guy driving the modest car or the one driving the luxury car?
Okay, now you live in the state of New York, though, and like New York is kind of what I'm getting to is that we kind of live in a world of excessive financialization, unfortunately, Bill, too, if you look at it, I don't know if you've seen like the figures during this pandemic. All these billionaires, the Bezoses of the world, and so forth, is we've had just incredible economic inequality, which like I've never seen the likes of. Actually, they say it's on a parallel to prior to 1929. And if you study history, you're a history man. This doesn't usually end well. Am I correct, or what do you think?
Well, no, it doesn't end well. I hate to be negative. Look, I love this country, and there's always opportunity. There's no question. But boy, we're going to go through some difficult periods. You know what I fear most? Look, I have 5 grandkids, the oldest being 14. And so they're little kids. And what kind of world are we leaving them? That's the question. We're going to have a federal debt that's not going to be paid off until their grandkids are born. We're a debtor nation.
I don't know about you, but it's when you see it all, because you're an economist and PhD and all that stuff. But if you you just can't. If you put too much debt on an individual, a family, a corporation, or a government, eventually they end up. It just doesn't end up well. I mean, the bankruptcies right now, just seeing like J. Crew, Neiman Marcus. I mean, just
right.
Just all the time. What keeps you going through this? What keeps Bill? You're still enriched. If you're still talking about this and lecturing about this, what keeps you going? Is it your faith, or just trying to leave the world a better place? That's what my father said. You'll always leave something better than the way you found it. Is that what you're trying to do?
Well, no. Well, I certainly do want to leave it better. At least do as much as I can for my family and my immediate circle. But really, it is the faith. Sometimes we get so caught up with more. Look, remember the James Bond film, The World Is Not Enough?
Yeah.
I've met people like that, and I bet you have too. You can never have enough. It's a game to them. Yes, I do have a property up in the Adirondacks, and I will be going up there after this presentation today.
Good.
And spend a few days and just enjoy life. It's on the water. It's wonderful. It's crisp weather. Well, you know about crisp weather up in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's the faith of saying, how much does anybody need? I have pretty good health. In the Richer Than a Millionaire, there's a graphic that shows how much is enough. You might remember that. In fact, you might insert that into this presentation.
I'll see if my daughter can do that, yeah.
Yeah, and when you ask somebody who had $500,000, how much do you need to feel rich? And they say 5 times that amount, $2.5 million. When you ask somebody with $2.5 million how much they need to feel rich, they say twice that amount. When you ask somebody with 5 million, they say they need 8 million. My point is, it's a curve. Fortunately, it's not linear, so it is decaying over time. And about $5 million puts you in pretty good stead of saying you have more than most people have anywhere in the world. But we look at what is it? Where does a millionaire net worth put you in the scheme of things? Well, $1.2 million of net worth puts you in the top 10% in the United States. To be a 1%er, about $8 million will do it. who knows what's happening during, well, actually the stock market's been pretty good for whatever reason. So maybe that number has gone up to 10 million to put you in the top 1%. But, we see these athletes, who make these, $50 million a year, and some of them go broke. And you say, how in the world can that happen?
Yeah, actually, I think was most, the funny thing is I don't know if I interviewed Rick Barry the other day. I don't know if you remember, he's a pro basketball player, one of the best of all time. And Rick's, he's still an entrepreneur, and I think it was like, I don't know, you know the statistics, but we're like 60 or 70% of the athletes, would they end up broke after playing professional sport?
Yeah, it's some large number, because I think that $1 million earned is $1 million you can spend. And of course, when I've talked to some really high earners who get, lump sums like that, such as athletes, I talk about 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Spend a third, keep a third for taxes and administration, and have 1/3 long-term investments.
So getting into that too, what would you, what I do in the whole thing, but what would you recommend to the young next generation? I mean, I have younger children. I'm very blessed to have 3 wonderful children, 33, 31, and 29. And what's the type of thing you'd recommend for your children or grandchildren to save? Because I think you have to save before you invest. Now, unfortunately today, we're told that we have to invest and don't save, but...
Right. Well, sure, you have to have money to invest. And so you have to be a saver first, right? And so if they could just save, in fact, we find this to be empirically true. The millionaires that we've interviewed are saving about 20% of whatever they make. And the more you can save, the better off you are. Look, there's a concept called self-imposed economic scarcity, right? What's right between your ears. And if you can say, look, I'm making $100,000, why can't I live on 80,000? I mean, what is the median income in the United States now per household? It's about,
I think 50.
Yeah, about $50,000. Why not force yourself to live on 40,000 if you make 50,000? I mean, look, there's always somebody. Look, if you have a job, you're better off than most people. Okay, number one. And if you could be a good steward of your resources by saving that 20%, forcing yourself. I mean, look, I wish we had mandatory IRAs and 401ks, right? Then you had to opt out of. I think you've have a different stance on that, right?
Well, yeah, I do, because and this is philosophical, and luckily, because I've written these books and so forth, I get to know Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, and all that stuff. I'm more for safety and preservation of capital. As old Will Rogers used to say, I'm more concerned about the return of my money than the return on my money, because what I see, Bill, and this is just my philosophy, because most people today, luckily, like you work for the state of New York, so you had a great pension system and so forth, but the majority of the population has none of that now. And so I'm more of a things like using life insurance and annuities and things like that, because it's very, very safe. Because one of the things that I'd be happy to share with you and talk to you offline, but what I've found is that these giant asset managers, you have companies like Vanguard, BlackRock, Fidelity, State Street and so forth, where they control most of the money now passively. There's absolutely no accountability. So, as a small business person, I have to be very accountable to all my clients, okay? But when it comes to money management today, it's almost like let's give people our money and hopefully we make some money. I think the idea of safety and preservation of capital and becoming your own banker. I don't know if you're familiar with Nelson Nash's work. He was one of my he was one of my mentors, and he died about a year ago, and he was very blessed. And but also what you're saying coincides by saving about 20% of your wealth. We say 15 to 20%, If everyone just saved 15 to 20% of the money, I think you really wouldn't be a lot of need for financial planning. If we, and so that's kind of like, I got another one of my, Bob Castellone, he was the founder of Leap Systems, but so as an economist, you would recommend 15 to 20% of savings?
I really would, but because what happens is, if you look at your 100% and living on 80% with the self-imposed economic scarcity, the problem is people live on 120% and they have all this leverage. 2,500 years ago, in the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 7, the borrower is a slave to the lender. Yeah, that is such good advice that most people ignore. They say, well, of course I'm going to get a big mortgage and a big auto loan. That's the way we work in this country, right? Because we need more stuff. Yeah. Look, I used to drive a Mercedes, and but it was used. It was 5 years old. I bought it off one of my widowed friends, but it was great. It was an SCL 500, so it had a lot of speed. Toke up a big cigar, put it on cruise control. It was great as a 5-year-old car. But then, I drive a Subaru now, and it's also wonderful, which I also bought used. I bought a 2016 in 2015. It was a dealer's wife's car, and it had 1,500 miles on it, and I got a $3,000 discount, and it's loaded. So anyway, you can find I said I bought it in 2015, but it was already a 2016 model, used.
Yeah, well, I'm on the same, Bill, I'm the same way. I like nice cars. Anyone knows me, I know I like very nice cars, but I would never buy anything new. I like someone else to take the depreciation. But what are another things that concern me? Don't you think one of the things we should focus on, this is I'm putting this question out there, is the management of debt. Don't you think that's such an important thing now for the younger people to learn today about how to manage debt? Because this is...
Yes, especially with these student loans on getting an education that may not be very profitable, or they won't be able to pay off the debt because of some of the educational majors that they took. I'm a real proponent of education, make no mistake.
Yeah.
But there's something wrong with trade schools, and a lot of students would benefit by being a craftsperson, if you will, knowing how to do carpentry, plumbing, electrical, mechanics. We don't have enough of those skilled people. In fact, one of my contractors, who is now older than I am, and he says, man, I really wish I could work more by getting some young people to work with me, but they don't have the work ethic or the skills. That's one of the problems. He really there's really a skill deficit out there. And so, what do students do about debt? Warren Buffett talked about education and giving resources to your children. He says, give them enough so that they can do anything, but not so much they can do nothing. So, a parent has an obligation to help a child, I think, but don't subsidize their lifestyle. In fact, in Millionaire Nextdoor, one of the chapters is on economic outpatient care, EOC, right? And
I remember that, yeah.
And really, it's horrible in the sense of, the parent wants to coddle the child because it seems like a loving thing to do. They don't want to see them suffer or have any stress in their life. I mean, no parent wants to see that. So what do? They'll buy them a house. They'll buy them a car. They'll subsidize a lifestyle. They'll pay for their country club dues. Things that are, really lifestyle issues that once the parents realize, wait a minute, we can't afford this anymore, And what's the child going to do? Because they still are a child, aren't they? Because they never learned to make it on their own. So I think Buffett has a good point.
Yeah.
Don't give them so much they can do nothing. Let them create their own lifestyle, become entrepreneurial.
Yeah, but you must have had a hustle when you. How old were you when your dad died?
5.
5. So you had a hustle. Am I correct? I mean,
Yeah. Selling pears for sale, out on the street. I mean, it's just, it's okay. And going to a state school was good. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to do a speech at Walter Reed Medical Center. And when I asked them, well, wait a minute, you know what I talk about, don't you? They go, yeah, we know exactly what you talk about. We have young soldiers with severe disabilities who are going to get a lump sum payment plus $1,000 a month forever. Convince them to do something good with their money and not go out and buy a Cadillac Escalade. And that was basically the theme I took, saying, it's all about good stewardship of the resources, and they appreciated that. It's the right message, because it's so tempting, when you have some real problems because of the war or wars, to say, well, let's live it up.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're a student history, I don't know, Bill. This kind of I didn't think about it, but it's kind of if you look at empire, we kind of have as a nation, we kind of that must be Walter Reed Hospital. There's a lot of people who love disabled that's down there, right? We're kind of empire. I mean, we're like 140 countries or something like that. It's just and we have the military industrial complex, which Eisenhower warned about, and
Yes.
Any predictions as to what's going to happen in the future? You're an economist. Do you think, in terms of all this debt, it never ends well? Is my point.
Right, but as long as we keep interest rates low, like towards less than 1%, you can incur a lot of debt, right?
Yeah, but I don't know if you saw it in the journal the other day, all right, actually it was the Census Bureau that came out, more people are going to food banks, I think, than since the Great Depression. It's just, I've been following this for a number of years, and the number of Americans who say they can't afford enough food for themselves and their children is growing, according to the census data, and it's likely to get larger now that some of the government benefits have expired. And actually, as of last month, 12.1% of all adults live in households that didn't have enough to eat, up from 9.8% in May. So people are going hungry. I live in a beautiful area in the seacoast of New Hampshire. It's a lovely area. I'm very, very grateful for. And a friend of mine actually runs the food pantry there, and he says that the amount of people who are coming in for food, in a very affluent area, has actually doubled in the past year. So my point is that I don't know. I think we need to be more prepared than ever.
Yeah, we have a garden. We grow our tomatoes, and our squash and our lettuce, and it's great. And the grandkids are in 4-H, and or some of them are anyway, and they have to do these kind of hands-on things. So there is some preparation there, and it's about parenting, isn't it? About preparing the next generation to be able to survive during adverse circumstances. But when we look at the underpinnings of Richer Than a Millionaire, and we look at, well, what are the real things that make you richer? And it's not money.
It's not money.
It's about practicing the golden rule, doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. In Judaism, in Isaiah chapter 58, we have the passage of giving your coat to those who have no coats and feeding the hungry. Well, in Matthew 25, we also have that which you've done to the least of these, you've done unto me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we look, and even one of the pillars in Islam is almsgiving, one of the 5 pillars of Islam. So when you look at the philosophies of the great religions, they all talk about being charitable. Well, maybe there's something to that, okay? And what we find in our own empirical studies is that when we look at millionaires who are charitable versus those who are not, we have a measure of happiness and contentment in those who are givers are more satisfied in life than those who are takers and never have enough. So I don't know that we needed an actual survey to do that, because it makes so much good sense. But when you have the numbers, it's kind of hard for people to refute it and saying, well, that's just your opinion. Well,
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think there's enough research. I think one of the papers just came out something this week. But yeah, you give, and I think I think it's just great for your mental health and your being, your soul.
it is, because again, it comes down to recognizing your own mortality, right? Saying, look, I remember going to a conference at the university where one of the alums, who is now aged, but he was a postman all his life, and he gave over $1 million to the library. And a reporter asked, sir, why are you doing this? I mean, you are just a mailman. I mean, don't you have a family you want to support? He goes, they are all doing well. But his one phrase that was so relevant, there are no pockets in burial shrouds. So he says, this is going to be for the greater good of the students at the school. The legend will live on. He'll probably get a plaque with his name on it. I don't know. Not that he needs a plaque, but the point is he knows that there's a greater purpose for the money than just spending it or getting it taxed away, right?
Yeah, I think you don't have to do a lot. You mean if you just help one person, if everyone just helped one person, is down and out, you can't say the whole world, but I mean, you just help an individual like you did with your brother and stuff, and which to me, I admire that tremendously, Bill. Now, so any new projects you're up to today, or are you carrying the torch?
I'm enjoying. Can't I just enjoy life for a moment? Yeah, I cut my grass yesterday. That was great. I cut my own grass. I don't have to belong to a gym, right? And I take my power walks. But no, I have a message along with my colleague Rich Van Ness, and we talk about these issues, give presentations, we write some articles, and we're having fun. We have nothing to prove. We just want to continue the education and get it in print. People can go to the website, they see a lot of our stuff, richerthanamillionaire.com, and you have a treasure trove. And of course, I always encourage people to buy the book.
Bill, this has been fun. Let's do this again. Let's keep in touch. We need more people like you. We need more Bill Dankos. And
well, I appreciate that.
He counted on America to be passive. He counted wrong.